Hey, what's going on YouTube? Today we're working on a Palmetto State Arms KS-47, and it's a really great rifle. We really love it a lot. It's a AR-15 platform chambered in the 7.62x39, and what we're going to be working on today is the trigger. The trigger that comes with is a little heavy for our liking. We really like this rifle a lot. It has a lot of great features right out of the box. And this basically is how it will come to you straight out of the box, just like this. Well, obviously it doesn't come with the scope. We put that on. So what we're going to be working on is the trigger here. And the trigger that comes with is a little heavy. We were wanting to upgrade it to a 3.5 pound trigger pull to be a little more consistent with our shots. And what we actually found was that, to the best of our knowledge, there's not a actual trigger available for this rifle. Being this rifle is a little bit different than most. This mag here has an AK-47 style magazine that it takes, and it has the AK-47 lever, which there's some additional parts in here and a spring that's actually down here by the trigger mechanism, which makes makes the standard AR-15 trigger unable to be used in here. But we found a way around that, and actually on this one here, we actually went ahead and installed it, and this one works really, really well. So we wanted to show you that, based on the fact that we could not find any videos on YouTube showing this. And we found this Rise Armament trigger, and that's what we used in the one that we put it in.
All for under $100, guys.
And the thing about it is right out the package, this will not work. You cannot put this in your rifle as it is. You need a little bit of modification to make this work. Now, we looked around, we checked with PSA, we couldn't find anything that would just come right from a manufacturer and go right into this gun. So we did some research, found this Rise Armament, and it's a really good trigger, a really good product. We really like it a lot. And we installed it, test fired it, loved how it ran, so we wanted to bring you guys a video of how you guys could do this for yourself at home. And hopefully you guys will get some better results out of your rifle as well. So to do this, you just basically need some simple tools. We have some simple hand files here. These are just from Harbor Freight. Cheap little file set here. They're a 12-piece needle file set. We have a 3/16 Allen wrench. I have mine on a ratchet, but you can use this as a standard Allen wrench. I also have this punch set here from Harbor Freight as well. Kind of helped me align things up a little bit. And this is the old trigger out of the other Palmetto KS-47 that we took out. So you can see there's a bunch of parts here, and that's what we'll be replacing.
And show that this operates fine with the mag in it.
So the nice thing about this is when you guys go to put this in, the new one is it's actually just a one-piece setup, so that makes it a little bit easier for some of you gun owners that may not be familiar with all these working parts. This makes your job a lot easier. So before we get into putting this in, I just want to show you guys that the Rise Armament is installed here on this one. And we're checked to make sure this is clear, as you can see, or maybe you can't, but it's clear. You can trust me on that. And I just want to show you quickly the trigger on here, how nice and light this is. It's very light, very crisp, and it runs very well. So, enough talk, let's get into it. We're going to start by removing the upper. Pop this pin here and pop this pin here to remove the upper. So we'll take that, set that off to the side. And now what we're going to want to do is go ahead and remove the handle here. if this is your first time doing something like this, please keep in mind that there is a spring in here. So you want to be cautious of that. And there's also a detent for the safety select switch to keep that in, to make that function, I should say. So go ahead and pull that off. And here's where that spring goes, right there on the side of the mag here, so make sure you don't lose that. And the detent is going to be right in here, which is a little hard to see. So you'll want to go ahead and take that out, set that to the side. It's a small part, you don't want to lose that. Alright, so we got that out, and that's what that looks like. Now when you go to reinstall this, make sure the point end is upward. So we'll go ahead and set the parts with our grip off to the side. So at this point you could actually go ahead and remove the safety selector switch. This actually just will pull right out once you have the detent out. Go ahead and pull that out, set that off to the side. And at this point we're going to want to go ahead and remove the 2 pins here, and that will remove your trigger assembly. There's a few parts in here. For me, I'm not concerned about keeping it intact or anything like that. I'm not going to use it anyway, so I'm just going to take it apart like this and put it off to the side. So we have the first pin out here. Go ahead and set that off to the side. And sometimes it's helpful to push these through with whatever you may have that may fit through. I'm just using the basic Allen wrench to help me push these pins through. If you have a vise, it may be helpful. For the sake of this video and for making it filming for me, I didn't choose to use one. So here are the trigger pieces. We got those out. They are under tension, so be careful, they'll spring out. I was expecting that, so I wasn't concerned about it, so that's why I had it aimed the way I did. So this is really the main focus, what you really need to look at here. And this may be difficult to see, but there is a spring right in here that's on the mag. Yep, I might not have enough light here to show you guys, but there's a spring that is for this mag release here, and that spring sits right on the bottom of the receiver in there. I'm not sure how well that's showing up for you guys. But that spring being there in its location is going to stop this trigger from sitting all the way down here. Okay, so we have a light here. Maybe you guys can see that a little better now. So the spring is sitting right in this area here. So that spring will stop this trigger from sitting flush down on the bottom of the receiver. And if this does not sit down flush on the bottom of the receiver, the pins won't line up and you'll have a really hard time trying to get this back together. So what we found that works well, and worked really well for our other one, is we took the trigger and we went ahead and set it in place. And what I did was I took it and I worked it back and forth in there on top of that spring so that it will actually scratch the paint of the trigger. So not sure if that was enough. Pull it out, take a look and see. Might have to do it a couple times to show me on the trigger where the actual spring is going to sit. And that was not enough, so we'll need to try it again. And really what I'm trying to achieve here, you guys can do it any way you like, is I'm trying to see precisely where this spring is sitting at so that I could file it down on this trigger so that I could install it and have it flush mounted on the receiver so that the pins will go in properly. So you guys could measure this, you guys could use you know, whatever kind of instrument you have that will show you where this spring is. So once we have our mark on here, and I just got my mark started here, and you're probably not going to be able to see that, but I have a slight scratch here which indicates where this spring is. So what I found that works best is we actually took a round file and we're going to file this area on the trigger here so that this trigger will fit flush on the receiver. We want to file just enough so it fits perfectly on there and allow this trigger to go all the way down so we can install it and get the pins in without a problem. And there is enough meat on this here. Filing it down just a little bit isn't going to hurt it in any form. And we're filing it just enough for that spring to fit on there so it won't be a problem whatsoever. And being this is the second one I did, I have just a light scratch here. I feel really confident that that is where my spring location is. And what I'm doing is I'm looking at the position of the spring to see how it's aligned so that I'll file in that same fashion so that it fits in there perfect without any slop. I don't want to over file it, so I'm going to file it down slowly and I'm going to check it over a few times to make sure that it fits well. So we'll file it, check it, and then we'll file it and check it some more until we have it filed just to the right degree so that this trigger fits in there just fine. And what I'll do here is I'll give you kind of an idea. You can look through the pins here and you see that I'm sorry, I missed the camera. So I'll give you an idea here is that these two pins where they're going to go back in to hold the trigger group in, this forward pin here, you will not be able to get the pin back in there. It's slightly off and you probably can't see it in the camera, but once you go to do this project for yourself, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, and this will be very helpful for you. And once again, if you guys have a vise to do this in, I would highly recommend using a vise. For the sake of the video, I'm just going to do it by hand, and I'm comfortable with doing that. You want to start filing on the corner so you got a ridge so that you can work your file on so that you don't file it in a angle that won't work for your application. And your spring could be sitting in a slightly different way than mine or something to that nature, so what I would recommend is looking at it, take a look at the spring positioning, make sure you know exactly where it is so you only have to file once. Now some people might not be might not be too keen on this idea of filing parts down. And trust me, this was my very first experience in doing something like this. It was not that difficult to accomplish, and I felt pretty comfortable in doing it. But again, you want to make sure that you're not taking off too much and that you got it in the right position, so you only have to do this once. And make sure you keep any of these shavings out. If you get some shavings down in the trigger group, make sure you clean them up very well. And before you fit it in your rifle, I would also recommend cleaning off any filings you may have. Now they may come out with something in the future that already has this groove in it, but as of this moment there's nothing available, so that's why we're doing it like this. So now you might be able to get a better idea here as to what I'm working on doing. So you can kind of see the mark I have going here. Let's see if we can get something to point at this with. So we got the mark started here, and we're just going to take our time and file that. I already have an idea about how much I need to file this, but for your own sake, file it just a little bit and check it, and you'll know when you have it completely done is because you'll be able to get your pins in both of these slots. And this Rise armament does come with the anti-walking pins, which we are going to use on this application. Alright, so I got mine looking pretty good to start with, so I'm going to go ahead and check this and make sure all the metal shavings are wiped off. And as I said before, what I'm going to be looking for is to make sure that these pins line up properly. And this one is fitting a little more snug than the last one I did. So in looking at this, I could tell that I have a little more to go, so we're going to go ahead and file a little more down. And basically what I was using this punch kit for was to help me line this up and pull it into position and just make sure that it's in position as best as it could be, and that I'm not over filing any extra material that I don't need to be filing. And it looks like I actually on my first try got it within probably a few thousandths, so I just need a little bit more to go. And to give you an idea how much we're taking down, it's really slight, guys. It's really slight. And when you get done, if you wanted to, you could put a little paint on there if you didn't like the mark being there. So as you can see from this angle, you can't hardly see it that well, but it's really just a little bit of material here, guys. It's not going to compromise the structural integrity of this trigger group by any means. So we'll go ahead and file this down just a little bit more, and that should be all it takes to get this done. I like to rotate my file as I'm doing this, so I make sure that I don't have any filing stuck in the file. Keep it clean as you're doing this so it files nice and evenly throughout. Just remember, guys, as I said before, when you do start this, it is best to file this lip on an angle like this. And the idea behind filing this like this is so you have a channel, so when you go to file in this motion, that the file isn't going on different angles that you don't want to go on. This will help guide your file into the proper positioning so that you only file right where you want to file and you're not filing anything else. Alright, let's check it again. I think that's going to be about all it needs. Alright, so once again here, guys, we have the spring here, and we're filing down the trigger group to make room for that spring so it does not interfere with the function of this. And once we get this all put in, I'm going to show you guys that it does work.
And the spring that's in there is for the release for the mag.
Right. You want to make sure you get these pinholes lined up the best you can. That's why I'm using this punch here to help me do that. Now there's probably better tools, probably a better way to line this up, but for me this is what works well and what I'm going to be doing. And so what's going on here, guys, is that the trigger group here is fitting really snug. I probably need a little bit of oil to help me along with this, but I don't have it right this minute. It's giving me a little bit of trouble lining it up, which isn't that big of a deal, but typically I'd throw a little bit of oil on there to help things move along a little better. And it does look like we have these lined up perfectly. So at this point, what you want to do is you want to use these anti-walking pins that actually comes with the Rise armament, which is very nice that they include them. In some of these trigger groups, they actually do not come with them, and you may have to purchase them separately. These have screw heads on them to secure them in place on both sides. So once you get them in, you're going to need to take the Allen key on both sides and lock them together on both sides. What I typically do is screw the screws in on one side, and I'll go ahead and give them a light tap in there with a rubber mallet. And as you can see, guys, she went in great, beautiful. I have to get them snugged up a little bit better, but there you have it. Proof that this will work and that you can use a 3.5 pound trigger on this setup. Once again, like I said earlier, it is definitely in your best interest to use a vise for this. For the sake of me trying to make this video as quick as I can, I opted not to use that vise, so I'm able to demonstrate to you guys just how easy this actually is to do.
Need to pull it back a little bit so you can see it.
Oh. So there we have the screws on this side, and we have the screws on that side, and the pins are in just fine. I do have to tap this one in just a little bit further. What's that? Alright, now we got that lined up the rest of the way. What you want to do is go ahead and get both screws snug, and you're going to want to have an Allen wrench on both sides of this to make sure you get this nice and snug. In my personal opinion, I would not use a thread locker for this. You know, in case this is something you want to service and you might have to take off again in the future, you may run into problems getting these out. And from my experience, you are not going to have any trouble with these pins working themselves loose anyway. So I personally do not see the need to use any type of thread locker. So the trigger is in, as you can see. Functions nice and beautiful. And you do want to check that before you go any further to make sure this is functioning just fine. Next up, we're just going to reassemble her, and for all you guys who already know how to assemble it, you don't need to watch any further, but for the rest of us, we're going to go ahead and put this back together for you. So what you're going to want to go ahead and do next is reinstall your safety. And that'll just push right back in there. And in some cases you may need to push the trigger group down a slight bit to get that in. And it may take some wiggling. That has nothing to do with it. I guess I did need to have that down. Need to have the hammer down to install that. I wasn't paying attention to that. So that'll snap back in like that. And now what a lot of people who haven't done this before may forget is to reinstall your detent. And remember, the pointed end goes up, and that's going to go right into this hole here for the safety selector switch. So just go ahead and pop that right in there. And remember our spring earlier that's in our grip. You can kind of see that there. That spring needs to align up perfectly with that detent in order to make sure that your safety select switch works properly. So we got that back together. Good to go. Last thing, put our bolt back into our grip. You can use Allen key for this. It's 3/16. I like to use my ratchet. It makes it a little easier for me. So now that is all back together. Mag still works properly. And once I get the upper on, I'll actually go ahead and show you that. At this point, we're going to go ahead and slap the upper back on. Alright, here you have it, guys. Here's our finished product. We know this is clear, but always make sure you check, make sure this is clear before you rack your gun. And just look how light this is. So light, so crisp. And what you're probably all wondering about is the mag. Is the mag going to work just fine? And yes, it is. So let's show you that. Mag goes right in, nice and tight, no problems. Releases, no problems. There you have it, guys. That's how to install a 3.5 pound trigger on your Palmetto State Arms KS47. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you liked it, please like, share, subscribe. And once again, it's a Rise armament that we went with, the RA140 SST. They make a great product. I would recommend it for this application. It's a budget-friendly option, and they work great. Thanks for watching, guys.